Hi, everybody. I'm Don Meisner, and I'm here again with my buddy Russ Eddy. And, this is a new online venture for us. It's something we haven't done before, but I'll tell you what, Rust and I have spent a lot of time fishing together. And Rust has always been willing and helps me with the radio shows that I do. And we talk about a number of things. And I wanted to talk about a few of those things today, Russ, that have been highlights for me in listening to you. And it's about the stories, the experiences that come when we go fishing, when we go muskie fishing, that are above and beyond just the catching of a muskie. And one of the tales that you told me one day when we were doing a radio show, nobody could see what we were talking about, but it was a day you were out and you told me about this muskie that did this incredible journey in following your lure back to the boat. Can you tell us about that day? Do you remember what that muskie did?
I remember that story. You threw me a curveball here because
I know you were trying to figure
I
out.
was expecting a different story. So that day, actually, we had fished. What we do often is we fish the Grass River really, really slowly and accurately and carefully, and get all of the section done in a number of hours, and then we turn the boats around and sort of speed back to the, because we've got boats on either side of the bank, and we had done that day, and I was on one bank with Melissa, and we finished fishing the stretch that we were fishing. We turned the boat around, and I've got the trolling motor on full, and it's not zooming, but it's certainly at a much faster speed than you'd normally be cruising the river fishing for muskies. And as she always does, she's just speed fishing. She's just throwing that lure up against the bank, just really for nothing better than just to do it. And almost never that fast do you ever entice a muskie out. She threw that lure up right on the bank in the perfect spot where a muskie might be, and she was pulling it back, and all of a sudden, here comes the wave. And I cut the motor real quick, but that didn't stop our momentum, and the boat kept drifting. And then as she was pulling that lure back from the bank, there was a log that was out at an angle. It was at like a 45-degree angle. And the fish came out from here on the bank, and it was coming right here, and you could see the lure coming right over that log because her line had drifted on the other side of the log. Now we're on the opposite side of the log. The lure's coming at us. There's log. The fish is behind the lure. You can see the wake coming behind the lure, and we both laugh. This is not going to end well. The lure jumps over the log. The wake makes a left turn, goes out into the middle of the river, out around the outer edge of the log, turns back in towards the bank, towards the lure, turns right in, right behind the lure as it's coming to our boat, and now the wake is coming back behind the lure again, and then it just disappeared. And it was better than catching any fish ever to see that fish do that wake do that. And we never saw that fish.
That's really, that amazed me then. It amazed me to think about it now. And I think we underestimate what happens in whatever size those little brains are in their head of how they process, how they, dare I say, think. But the fact that fish was headed for it, and all of a sudden there's this big obstacle, and it had the sense to go around that obstacle, plan its journey, and then come back and find that lure again as that lure was coming closer and closer to the boat. Again, something that you might forget half the muskies you catch, and you probably won't, but you might forget some of them. But you'll never forget that experience of seeing that muskie do that. And that brings something else that I remember you were fishing. I don't even know if you were fishing for muskies. I know you went out this day and I think you were fishing for panfish in this other body of water. And you called me to tell me, not about how many panfish you caught, but about this experience that happened as you were watching the skies. Tell us that too, because that is fascinating.
That you started this little segment off by saying that sometimes the stories that we tell after we go fishing are about things that are totally unrelated to fishing, and some of those are the best stories. And you're absolutely right. That day we were on the St. Lawrence River, but it was in this little back cove that was really more of a quiet little pond, even though it was part of the river. It had the aquatics in the environment of a pond. It had little stumps up here and a bank, and it was tiny. We were in a little canoe, and it was pan fishing. We had bobbers, and that particular day our bobbers weren't bobbing very much. We weren't seeing very many panfish, but there was an osprey that was doing circles above our head. And I was with Wild Bill Losey on this day, in fact, and we both, we appreciated watching that osprey. And then a little while later, that osprey flew down really low, and it perched itself in a tree, on a tree limb, not far from the bank of the little pond we were in. And I told Wild Bill, let's be real still, because the wind was pushing the canoe right towards the bank and getting us closer by the second, but very slowly, to that bird. And I pulled out my phone, and I thought, well, I wonder how close we'll be able to get with me just being able to just be real quiet and still and drift towards it, and I'll just take a few pictures as well. And we got closer and closer, and as we got, 20 or 30 feet or yards, not that far from the bank, that bird left its perch, glided, flew right towards us, then turned and went straight down. And I have a picture of this that we're going to pull up here. And I just started snapping pictures, and I got lucky in that. It was amazing, Don, to see that big osprey disappear in the water with that big splash, and then it was gone. 1001, 1002, and then it erupted right back up in another splash just like that, and it flew right up over our heads, and I started snapping pictures, and you can see, I think that's probably a baby pike, but I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it's a fish that it had caught in its talons and flew away, and I got lucky enough to catch that picture in a frame, and it was a gift. That was a gift, a natural world, natural wonder gift, and I was super lucky to be in pictures of it.
That's something that I think both of us appreciate an awful lot. The things that we see and hear when we go fishing. I remember another time you told me about coming to this point and something had happened. It looked like a wolf or coyote had come out and attacked a great blue heron. And you sort of witnessed the aftermath of that. And that affected you a lot. But the powers of nature, you've watched so many things happen. You've watched coyotes come down over the bank and swim across the Grass River. But now I'm going to take you to a story that I know you will never, ever forget. And I want to set this story up a little bit, because people say to me so often when they see pictures of these muskies in these small streams, they're like, oh my God, those things are out there. I'm never going to go in that water again. I'll never go swimming in that water. Is it safe to wade? And I always tell people, oh yeah, it's fine. I've been waiting for these for years. But then the story happens of what the vicious teeth that lie inside the mouth that allows them to be king of all waters, what they can do. So tell us the story about the muskie you caught one day last year.
So again, as so many of my stories occur, this one was with my fishing buddy Melissa, and we put my canoe in the river early one morning, and it was just, you just never know. It's just these atypical mornings where it was one of those days where the fish were on fire. And I know this because on my very first cast, I had a weight come out. And on my second cast, and I didn't catch that fish, but on my second cast, I threw it out there nearby. And I was happy to be fishing my muskrat, which goes underwater. And I felt the strike, and the fish was on, and I knew it was really big. I could tell this was a really big muskie. And it was an acrobat. This fish, and I've got a picture of that fight that we can look at here, and that fish jumped up, and when that fish broke the surface, that's a 40 plus, that's mid 40s, if not bigger. That fish is big, and I knew it took a long time to bring that fish in, and I like to release them. If I see the barrel of the hook, I just pop it loose. But this fish, probably a female, she had inhaled that lure pretty deeply, and there was no getting that lure out with my pliers. So we netted it, and it was a struggle to get the fish even to where I could see the lure, and finally I got it. to where I held the pliers, and I got the pliers on the barrel of the hook, and the hook was down in the fish's mouth. And of course, the hook goes like this. And to get the hook out, I had to push down real fast to release that hook. And I came up with 7 puncture wounds and a trip to the emergency room, which I believe on the way to the hospital, I was calling you to let you know because you were about to do your radio shows. And I said, well, I got a little story for you. So we've got a good friend, Mike Small, and he often says, if you muskie fish, you're going to eventually get bloody. And I had never beforehand, but you know what? This was all in an effort to really protect that fish and save it, because I could have ripped that lure out just pulling it, but instead I pushed down forward into the fish's mouth so that the hook would come out and the lure would come out safely, and she swam away, which really made me feel good about the whole scene. So
When you got to the hospital or wherever you went, what did they say to you when they looked at your hand, a mass of blood all over your clothes and everything, and all these big puncture wounds in your hand? Were you surprised?
Well, they were surprised to have anybody walk into the emergency room with the complaint of fish bite to begin with, and truthfully, when we cleaned it all up, it didn't look nearly as bad as it did when it was really bloody, and it seems like maybe I didn't need the visit, although they were happy I came in because I needed a tetanus shot. So I didn't get any stitches, which I thought I would need, but you know, the funny thing about it is those 7 puncture wounds created a whole lot of blood, which was a lot more scary than when they cleaned up and they looked really not so bad. And I was kind of embarrassed for being in the emergency room, but it all worked out, and it's a good story.
You are minimizing what I think is the real power of that story, and that is that these fish have come to mean so much to you that you were willing to stick your hand, knowing darn well that you were going through knives of hell to get your hand down in there to get that hook out, and you were willing to do it. And that shows how much you love these fish, and that's why not only are these stories special, but these fish, I think, have played a huge part in your life. So until we meet again, I know there's a whole lot more stories that you've told me with all the times that you go out muskie fishing. I remember one night you decided to sleep right there on the bank of the river, and you decided that you were going to give yourself a chance to experience what the fishing would be in the evening and in the early morning to see if you could take full advantage of the muskie potential. And what you found on that weekend that you did this was truly amazing. But we'll leave that for another story. I hope you're all enjoying finding out some of the things that make fishing so special. It's a lot more than just catching a fish. Until next time, this is Don Meisner and Russ Steady. We'll see you here soon.